Welcome to the CELS Autoclave training for the CELS building. Let's begin. I want to begin by reviewing some very basic safety rules for use of any autoclave. Autoclaves use live steam, hot water, and they're very hot, which you know already, but it's worth repeating. Now, on our CELS autoclave, if there is a steam supply malfunction, you will hear an audible alarm making what's been described as a warbling sound. If that happens, the autoclave may be filled with hot steam and scalding water, so it's common sense, but don't open the door. Notify your CELS safety committee member to deal with that issue. To continue on some basic safety rules that apply again to all autoclaves, remember that the sterilizer, the racks, and the load will be hot after a run, so you're going to wear heat-protective, personal protective equipment, primarily heat-resistant gloves, but it is also necessary to wear safety glasses or safety goggles when unloading the autoclave in case there's any splashes or spills or hot liquid coming out. Another thing to remember is that the sterilizer is not designed for flammable liquids, so keep the flammable liquids out of it. And to avoid any kind of slip and fall injuries, the floor in front of the autoclave has to be kept dry. We are dealing with steam, and if the steam escapes and condenses, it can form a puddle on the floor. Some other basic safety rules are that during the run, temperatures will reach between 121 to 125 centigrade or about 250 Fahrenheit. So you're only going to use borosilicate glass or Pyrex labware, or if you're going to put any kind of plastic in the autoclave, make sure that it is autoclave safe. Another thing about the red bags that are used for sterilization, not all red bags are capable of withstanding these temperatures. So make sure you check the temperature that your waste bag is designed to withstand. And if you're not certain about any of your labware, you can call the manufacturer. There are technical service people who are there for you to ask questions. You want to place all materials to be sterilized in a plastic or metal tray. You do not want to place them directly on the autoclave rack, and this rule also applies to the red waste bags. So let's look at this photograph here. The operator made two mistakes when loading the autoclave. First, put the caps on too tightly. So what happened is as the liquid heated up, the steam escaped. The cap was then on very tightly, so as the autoclave cooled, there was a very little pressure inside the bottle, and the atmospheric pressure started crushing the bottle. Secondly, where would the liquid have gone if the bottles had cracked or leaked? You'll notice that they're directly on the autoclave shelf, and if they had spilled or cracked, the contents would have fallen into the sterilization chamber. Whenever you are autoclaving liquids, there always has to be adequate headspace to allow the liquids to expand as the autoclave temperature rises. And also remember that all containers must be capped loosely so that pressure does not build up inside as the liquid heats up. And the most important safety rule is, when in doubt, ask, don't guess. Let's talk about a few issues related to our specific autoclave in the CELS building. Firstly, the autoclave does not generate its own steam, and it uses the same steam that the building uses for heating and cooling, which means, of course, that we are dependent on the steam supply from the campus cogeneration plant. So there may be interruptions, there may be fluctuations in pressure, and amines are added to the steam for pH control. So there might be a chemical reaction with that steam, with those amines, and a sample. The autoclave is equipped with a pump that will remove any condensation, and it can be rather loud when it is running. And the autoclave is set up to display the sterilization temperature and the pressure inside the sterilization chamber. You never want to open the door unless the pressure inside is reading 0 or the system software gives you a "it's safe to open the door" message. When you step up to use the autoclave, remember that it is pre-programmed with procedures or cycles that are designed primarily to sterilize liquids. You can, of course, use them to sterilize solids or wastes. The waste cycle, for instance, is designed for the routine sterilization of red bag biological wastes. And we have what's called a load probe in the autoclave. It's the little thermocouple on the end of the green cable, and that will go into your load or your media or whatever it is you're sterilizing and give you very accurate temperatures. So you place the load probe directly into the material you want to sterilize. But if you do not want to risk contaminating your material, place the probe into a flask of water set into the tray next to the materials to be sterilized, and never puncture a red bag with the probe because you want to see how hot it got inside the bag. That's what the autoclave tape is for. So let's turn our attention to actually running an autoclave. We begin by locking the door and confirming that the main menu screen is displayed. At this point, the next thing is to select the cycle. And to reach this menu, you may need the cycle password, which is 4 zeros. If you are not certain which of these cycles is appropriate for your sample, you can press the cycle button and see its operating parameters. The cycle parameters are displayed on this screen. The two most important ones on this screen are the sterilization time and the sterilization temperature. If these are acceptable, you simply press Start Cycle. If not, press the Cycle menu and you can look at the parameters for another cycle. Before we press the button and start the run, let's talk about the sterilization temperature. There are two ways that the system knows when to start the sterilization cycle: the chamber temperature or the load probe. Let's look at the load probe. This is that thermocouple on the end of the green cable. So if the cycle is programmed to use the load probe, the sterilization starts when the probe temperature equals the sterilization set point. However, if you use the chamber temperature for the sterilization, the chamber temperature is the average temperature of the sterilization chamber. The temperature of your load may not be the same. There may be temperature variations within the chamber. The chamber temperature is an average of the chamber, and when the average temperature of the chamber reaches the sterilization set point, then the sterilization cycle begins. So there's two ways to measure the temperature of the material you're sterilizing. So how do I know which one I'm using? On the second page of the cycle parameters menu, you'll see something called the F0 value. If F0 equals 0, then we're simply using the chamber temperature to know when to start the sterilization. However, if F0 equals anything else, then we are using the load probe. The F0 value is the number of minutes for the sterilization time, and it will start counting down when the probe reaches the preset sterilization temperature. Now we are ready to start the cycle. As the system automatically goes through the phases of each cycle, it will display the time remaining on the main screen. The large numbers in the black box show the estimated time to complete the entire cycle, or the projected cycle completion time. The smaller numbers up on the top are the time left in the individual phase of the cycle. So how much time is left for charging the autoclave with steam? How much time is left for venting the autoclave after the run? How much time is left in the sterilization phase of the cycle? Sometimes the projected cycle completion time will stop counting down, and you'll be wondering what the system is doing. At that point, you should press the Display Sensors button. By pressing the Display Sensors button, you will see what's actually happening, and you can see if it's counting down or if it's coming up, what the autoclave is doing, what it is programmed to do, and how close the two are matching. The chamber temperature, the load temperature, all of these things are displayed when you press the Display Sensors button. So you can compare the actual temperature or pressure to the set points and know where you are in the individual phase of a cycle. And when you are done checking those things, you can return to the previous screen by pressing Cycle Display. At this point, you can walk away and return when the cycle is complete. Now, if you need to record or to observe the actual sterilization conditions when the cycle is in the sterilize phase, you can press the Display Sensors button. The chamber pressure and temperature as well as the load temperature will be displayed. And when the cycle is complete, you will get a message that the door is safe to open. Remember to clean up any spills or condensation. You may leave the door open or leave it closed when the autoclave is not in use. We have no official policy on that point. Remember that the load you're taking out is going to be hot. If you've used the load probe, you're going to neatly coil it on the little storage rack on the side of the autoclave and make a record of the run in the appropriate logbook. Now, a question will come up, when do I use the red button? When do I press the abort button? First, here's a very simple safety rule. You never press the red button just because you want to advance the run, because it might be taking too long. The autoclave is automatically programmed to go through a shutdown and vent routine. So pressing the abort button is not going to move you along any faster. There are times when you may need to use the button, though. Each phase in the cycle is allowed a certain number of minutes to complete. Now, if there is a steam interruption, a water supply interruption, you may receive what's called a too long in phase error message. If the automatic recovery routine does not return the sterilizer to the point where the door can be opened safely, then you may press the red button. Otherwise, leave it alone. If the sterilizer stops counting down, if there's no change to what is happening in the chamber, sometimes the software gets confused, you may need to press the red button and abort the cycle, particularly when you see that too long in phase error message. There are some other good reasons to press the red button, such as a large steam leak from around the door, or you hear your samples exploding in the chamber. Now that you have mastered routine operation, we're going to dive into some advanced training for our next video. But right now, I'll pause